Spirit, one God, amen. It's always nice when we hear the Synaxar and we hear the saint of the day, and then we hear the gospel that the church associates with that saint. I know I've said this so many times, but just as a reminder, on Sunday there's set readings, and we read the readings of the day of Sunday, no matter who the saint commemoration day is. But on all the other days of the week, the gospel and the readings are associated with the saint of the day. And so what happens is you read the story of the saint. Abuna comes and reads the story of the saint in the Synaxar, and then you read what Christ said about the virtues that this saint portrayed. Christ Taban said it first, but the saints took the words of Christ and made them like a guide for themselves and did all that they could do to perfect the word and the actions of their life. So it's nice to see the words compared. So a saint like Abu Nufair, who was an anchorite or a hermit, someone that gave up the whole world, it says in the Synaxar story that he didn't see any other person for 60 years of his life. So he would have died in the desert and no one would have even knew really that he existed. Only the monks that he had left would have known that someone was named Nufair, living among them, a monk, and that he left and lived a solitary life. What ended up happening to him, they would not have known. And the gospel associated with the hermits is this passage from the Gospel of St. Luke about keeping watch, about staying up and watching. So we do this often. We stay up late and sometimes we watch TV, or we read, or we study. A lot of times when we're in college, there's this idea of like pulling an all-nighter. One time I had a big test in school, and I stayed up all night, neither sleeping nor studying because I was too tired to study and too worried to sleep. But we try to stay up and do something, to perfect something. So, like I said, some of us stay up for, entertainment reasons. If we have people over, we'll stay up to talk to them and just talk and talk and talk. Or if we have a big project coming up in work or homework in school that we haven't finished, we stay up to do it. Where we don't use staying up or watching often is to work on something that we need fixed in ourselves. Most of the time we're compelled to stay up for something else. So we'll stay up so that someone else can benefit from it, or ourselves can benefit from it when it comes to school and work. But most of the time we don't stay up for ourselves. So watching then becomes something that we can add to our lives. Staying up means staying up and thinking about something in your life, perfecting something in your life, perfecting an action. The saints had an unbelievable ability to focus on certain points in their spiritual struggle and perfect them as much as they can. And we also could learn from this. If perhaps in the future we stayed up 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour longer, praying for a certain sin that's been bothering us, that's been eating at us, that's been continuing in our lives throughout the years that we haven't been able to stop. Or something that we see within ourselves that's weak, that we want to fix. Like, for instance, if I find myself having trouble forgiving people for doing something to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's especially not bad if you see in yourself that you have this weakness of not being able to forgive things. The fact of the matter is there are some people that can forgive you if you did the worst things to them, and there are some people that were just born with this feeling of like, even if you just tap them on the shoulder, something inside of them just never is able to let them forgive you for doing something so small. So sometimes we have weaknesses that we're born with, and those weaknesses can be worked on and improved. So if you find yourself prone to anger, for instance, is another thing that a lot of us struggle with. Some of us, you can push them till the cows come home and they'll never get angry. And some of us, you just like walk in their shadow and I can't take it. I just get so mad and so angry. Again, it's not necessarily bad. It's how we are. It's our original nature. It's how we were born. But what we could do is we could stay up and focus and watch and pray so that this thing could be taken from us, so that this thing could be controlled. What will happen is if you spend many nights praying and asking and reading and contemplating and reviewing your life and the things that you did. So let's use the example of anger. If every night for the next 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 days, I stay up just a little bit longer praying about this issue, asking the Lord to help me with this issue, reading books about this issue, reading the gospel and seeing what the Lord said about anger and what the Proverbs say about an angry man, and learning and practicing and trying and failing and coming back and reviewing and seeing what I did and seeing how I did it and seeing maybe if I could do it better. If we stayed up and watched about this issue, you'll know and you'll realize that after a little while it starts to get better and better and better and better. And then the Lord can look down and say, this person was watching himself, staying up, and worried about something in his life that was important to me, that helped him to be loved and love those around him, so that my love, as in God's love, could be transformed within the world. So this is what the Lord is looking for from us. He uses the example of a servant that his master leaves him, and the servant has the whole house to himself. When, like some of us, when we're kids, when we're home alone, our parents are trusting that we're doing the right thing when we're at home, and we're still following the rules. And so the Lord is like that with us too. He doesn't interfere so much with our lives and try to push us or correct us certain directions. He gave us free will. But He said, I'm going to the Father, and I'm leaving you here. But He's always watching. And when He returns, whether it be that a few very, very, very long years of your life, you pass and go to Him, or during your lives, He comes down and returns in His second coming. When He comes or when you go, you must be ready. And the idea is you don't know when the time comes. But doing something as little and as important as focusing on yourself and finding the things that you do poorly and trying to improve them through vigil and prayer and thought and self-correction, you could have a part in that. And that's why this is a very distressing gospel, in the sense that it talks about our death, or it talks about the end of us. But in the beginning of the gospel, the church is careful to include the beginning words that the Lord said. He starts with something that's very sweet. He says, "Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's intention to give you the kingdom of heaven." So we're not trying to face a losing battle. We don't have the burden. The Lord wants us to be with Him, and He will help us if we just ask. And glory be to God forever. Amen.